Welcome to the Parts Party. I'm Adriana,
And I'm Ella.
and this is your invitation to hang out with us and our beautiful guests as we explore the lived experience of internal family systems. We want to share in our common humanity as humans who have multiple parts within us, so we can show you what it really is to honour this model of therapy in our own lives. This is a place for IFS nerds, therapists, enthusiasts, or just anyone who wants to get to know their parts and their self a little better.
So grab a soft drink for your little ones, a tea for your manager parts, and maybe something fancy for your firefighter parts. Because all parts are welcome. Our guest today is Martin Toré. He used to work as a physiotherapist, but struggled with his own mental health. When he discovered the internal family systems, it transformed his life. Having become a software developer by this point, he built something to help himself go through this process. That something was IFS Buddy, an AI tool for self-therapy that he never expected anyone else to care about. But after gaining traction overnight, it now helps thousands of people worldwide, has been showcased at major healthcare conferences, and universities are reaching out to include it in their research. Welcome to the Parts Party, Martin.
Thank you. Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Do you want to introduce yourself any further, professionally or personally?
Yeah, so I'm Martin. I'm from Sweden. Like you mentioned in the intro, I have a background as a physiotherapist. And I think that's sort of where my journey towards IFS began, actually. So I actually went to university in Australia, in Newcastle, and became a physiotherapist, worked for a couple of years down there. And coming from a family of engineers, my sort of worldview and way of viewing things was quite mechanical. And I think even in my education as a physio back then, around, yeah, what was it, from 2011 to 2014, our understanding of the body was still, we were still starting to figure out or come back to the fact that, feelings and trauma and memories and things can have an effect on your body and the physical symptoms that you can experience. And when I first started to learn about that, I was always sort of drawn to patients that had chronic pain because I felt that there's something more to this. It's very fascinating. Many people had usually a history of trauma, and as I started to work with a few chronic pain specialists, I started to understand that when you actually worked with the trauma and learn to accept what happened or go through therapy and work through things, a lot of times the physical pain would dissipate. And that was kind of mind blowing to me back then with the way that I viewed the world and the body. And I think that almost led me down a bit of a rabbit hole, just getting really interested in the types of therapies that people use to treat traumas, reading tons of books about trauma. And I think I slowly started to realize I was being pulled towards this just because, there's something in me that also wanted to be acknowledged or heard.
Mm.
There were also people close to me that had struggled with trauma, and I would notice with many chronic pain patients, unfortunately, a lot of the healthcare system finds them a bit of a burden because they're misunderstood. And it felt painful to me that they would be sort of left behind by many people. So I sort of continued my quest to understand how this all works and what can be done to help people. I ended up running my own physio practice for a while, but I hadn't really done much inner work myself, and I ended up getting close to burnt out. And then COVID happened, lots of other things in my life happened, and I was set on a journey of sort of more personal self-discovery. And yeah, somehow IFS sort of appeared into my life. And I think when I first started to read about the concept of parts, there's a part of me that's very logical and is like skeptical. And there was a lot of fear that, like, oh, am I going off the deep end here, doing something that's just strange? But there was something with it that just made a lot of sense and just spoke to me. So I started to read book after book about IFS. I was just fascinated with it. And eventually I found, do you know Derek Scott?
Yeah.
Yeah, I found his YouTube channel. And from there, I mean, I just learned so much and it felt like, you're starting to discover it's almost like the secret to life or something, but it feels like you're starting to understand yourself or life starts to become much more coherent than it was, which was very exciting. But with Derek Scott, he had a short series on shame. I think it's 3 videos, and I watched the first two, and I was kind of in awe just of just realizing like, okay, I'm definitely carrying a lot of shame. It's not something I'd ever thought about previously. And then he had a third video, which was a guided meditation to go through an unburdening of the shamed exile. And he'd sort of hidden it behind you had to sort of acknowledge that, this is a risky thing. You take responsibility for doing it. But that probably intrigued me a little bit more even. But I went through with that. And this meditation is only like 15 minutes long, but I sat with it and I'd pause the meditation when I needed to. I'd rewind it a little bit if I needed to, but I sat there for, it must have been 3 hours as I went through the unburdening process. And there were parts coming in trying to slow it down or distract me. And at some point, I just felt myself sort of shine through and say, no, it's okay. We can do this. This part really needs to be heard. And it was like, I don't think I'll ever forget that moment. And really, I think after that huge unburdening, my life has been changed. That was more than 2 years ago, and I still feel like that was there's like a before and after point after that unburdening. Just a beautiful experience. And around the same time, I'd gone through a career change, feeling burnt out, a bit of, empathy fatigue, working in healthcare, probably also a bit of jealousy of people that were able to work from home during COVID. So I became a programmer, a software developer, and at the same time felt quite unfortunately disillusioned with the tech world and how everything is sort of built to just pull in your attention, kind of suck your awareness into the phone or into the app, or just it felt like everything's kind of trying to take you away from yourself. So as a hobby project, I thought like, what can I create something that instead of doing that is able to bring you back to yourself? So at first, when I started to create IFS Buddy, it was just for myself to see if AI could help me to do self-therapy. And, I sat with it for a very, very long time, just trying to get it to work the way that I wanted, the way that was helpful for me to do self-therapy. And at some point, I was like, okay, this is working quite well for me. It's not that the AI is like a therapist, but it's like a little co-pilot or something when you're doing self-therapy. So I felt, okay, I should share this with the world in some way. And I had quite a bit of fear about doing that. I'd never really put something out there into the world like that or shared things. But ironically, it was like through working with Buddy that I could sort of let go of tying my self-worth with my projects that I'm putting out into the world or how well they do. So I posted it on the internal family systems subreddit, which was like a community of, I think back then it was like 20,000 people. And I thought, there might be a couple of people that would use it, but overnight there were hundreds of comments and messages that just kept on flooding in. and not all positive. Many people were kind of, I think some people had some scared or angry parts. There's a lot of fear around AI in general, but mostly it was people that were very shocked at how well it worked for them when they tried it, which was just amazing to me. And from there, it's just continued to grow organically. I haven't marketed it or anything, but today we have thousands of people each month using the chatbot, and it's been a beautiful thing to be a part of the past 2 years. Yeah, and that's how you guys found me. Have you both used the chatbot at all?
Yeah, we've had a play. It's quite amazing. I kind of see it more as like live, really good feedback journal prompts almost,
Mm.
like a way to have a really organic experience rather than having to kind of manage that internally. Yeah, it's very cool.
Hmm.
Yeah, Ella was the one that got me onto it. She was very excited one day, going, "Hey, you got to try this out." And it's exactly how Ella described it. It's just nice to have that mirror that kind of can help you reflect and hone in what's actually going on inside. And in prep of this today, I was like, okay, well, I'm seeing him in half an hour, going to be interviewing him. Let's chat to IFS Buddy and see what parts are coming up around that and just give me a little bit of clarity. It's a useful tool for that.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and I totally agree. I think it's like a mixture of journaling or self-therapy. I'm not really sure how to describe it, but it's not a replacement for therapy. Like a good self-led IFS therapist is definitely more useful, I think, than an AI chatbot. But I think the interesting thing from the messages I've received from a lot of people is that when they talk to the chatbot, there are no like the protectors that might be afraid of opening things up in front of a therapist are not there
Mm.
because the chatbot is not, a living thing sitting there potentially judging you. So a lot of people have tried therapy and they've had good success, but then when they try the chatbot, they're actually able to get a little bit further or get to a certain part that had kind of been locked away with a certain therapist, which I just think is really interesting. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's such a good point because I was thinking in my head it's a great adjunct to therapy because you don't have access to your therapist 24/7 and
Mhm.
maybe you see them weekly, maybe fortnightly, maybe once a month. And what if parts are coming up between then or you had this really intense session and you're still processing and but you're not going to see them for a while. It's
Mhm.
great to have something that you can use in the meantime that you've maybe already identified some parts, but you can just help get some support around it.
Mhm.
But it's also a really good point that you said. And as you were talking about self-therapy and doing, working with shame parts, there is something really safe in the idea of being able to do it with yourself. If it does feel too risky for a part to feel a sense of exposure or having to even say it out loud or have someone see this,
Mhm.
it's a beautiful idea to have something that can just create that accessibility. It's all about just accessibility for IFS. It shouldn't have to just be with a therapist or just look a certain way. So thank you for opening up the realm of possibility for people to find this.
Oh, I never expected it to become used by so many people, but uh, I'm just so full of sort of gratitude for being able to be a part of something like this. Receiving tons of very touching messages from people that they can't afford IFS therapy, they can't afford therapy in general, they might have too much anxiety to reach out and get help. It's been a very humbling experience to hear from so many people around the world. Yeah, just amazing. But I think what you were saying about it working well as an adjunct to therapy is a very good point. And a lot of people that use the chatbot do mention that either a therapist has recommended it to them to use in between sessions, or they've been just sort of doing it themselves. And I think to me, that's the ideal use case for it.
Mm.
That there is an IFS therapist there that can provide the self energy and sort of make sure and check in that things are going well.
Mm. That kind of safety.
Yeah, in the way that the chatbot might not fully be able to do,
Mm.
but for the chatbot to give people the accessibility, like you said, the freedom to continue to do the work that they need to, or just to be able to check in with themselves when they need to. if you wake up in the middle of the night in panic about something with an activated part of you, it's good to have something like that. But I've been, from the start, I was sort of, there was some backlash from people that are afraid of giving AI too much power or that type of thing. And I fully understand that as well. I think when ChatGPT came out, a bit more than 2 years ago now, I was in awe of the technology. It was amazing. But then I started to see the use cases that people were putting out there, and it's like, oh, create an AI girlfriend, or create this little character that you want someone to be addicted to so that they're just chatting with it all day. And I'm like, that's not right. So I've very consciously tried to avoid that happening with IFS Buddy. I think as humans, we have a tendency to be able to anthropomorphize many things. And I think something like an AI chatbot is very easy to make it feel like it's alive and that you build a relationship with it. And I've avoided giving it like a little mascot or a face or something so that you're like building a real relationship with it. I prefer to think of it as just a helpful tool. And I think it probably works best when you go into a session with it and you're able to keep that in mind, that this is, it's helping to guide you through this process, but you don't need to get tricked into believing that, it's alive and that it's a real therapist or something like that.
Yeah. Sounds like you've been really mindful all along the way to ask the more difficult questions. And yeah.
Yeah, I've tried. Yeah, I got a lot of help from quite a few different IFS therapists that got in touch that wanted to support me. And I want to run actual, clinical research to see what effects working with Buddy has. I'm trying to figure out who it's most appropriate for, because I don't want to just push it out there and say, oh, everyone should use it, if that's not true. So I was actually working with the University of Melbourne to potentially run a larger study. We're just seeing if our research grant will come in. And then Dr. Petraeus, who you talked to in the last episode that I listened to, really lovely woman. She is also looking at getting a research grant to run a study with the chatbot, which I'm very keen on doing actual research to see what the effects are. So yeah, hopefully those research grants come through so we can get a clearer picture.
Totally. Good luck.
Yeah.
Martin, I had a look at the subreddit and, there was a lot on there, but one thing that I noticed was there was a lot of grace, and your comments back to people that were a bit, like you said, fearful or worried about the AI were very gracious.
Mm.
And I wonder as well, before you wrote such beautiful comments, like how did your parts manage all that? It's a big thing to be the sort of face of something that people may be passionate about or fearful of or have a lot of questions. Can you share a little bit about your internal family systems in relation to it in a way that, yeah, as long as they give you consent, of course.
Yeah. So going back to that time when I first released the chatbot, yeah, it was very complex. I think the fact that I had done a lot of IFS before I actually put it out there made all of that difference. I don't think I would have been able to handle it very well, or I don't know if I would have been brave enough to even put it out there if I hadn't done that amount of inner work. And just, yeah, I think also having had experience working with a lot of chronic pain patients, actually, that's usually a very delicate conversation that you have when you work with chronic pain patients, because you're trying to open them up to the idea that there might not be something physically wrong in your back or body. There might be something else that's happening here, and opening them up to that without making it seem like, oh, you're just imagining your pain. It's a very delicate conversation to have. So I think just from my experience with that, when people get very angry or that type of thing, I think I've had experiences with that type of situation, and I was able to be grounded in myself that I'm not trying to do something harmful or careless here. This is coming from a genuine, heartfelt place in me, and that there's nothing to be ashamed of here. and that I will take critique seriously. I don't want to just just focus on the positive comments. I took a lot of feedback on board. Like at first, the chatbot had a male name. Actually, I named it Richard after
Oh.
Dick Schwartz. But I got feedback from a few people that a male name might not be appropriate for certain people. It might be triggering to certain parts of them.
Mm.
And I completely understand that. So I tried to go with something neutral, and I think Buddy, I think it works. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, it's great. It's a little sweet name.
Hmm.
Yeah. I would love to go back a little bit to, I really resonated with you describing your journey as a physiotherapist and then kind of discovering trauma, kind of deviating from that traditional medical model of viewing physiology and health and pain, and then realizing that there's a psychological component that really informs it. And then you deep dived into learning about trauma and other kinds of therapy, and you at some point you discovered IFS. And I'm wondering what it was like for you to start engaging with yourself or even discovering yourself as a system of parts and what it was like to start relating to yourself in a different way.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Because I think throughout the whole process, I was noticing like the things that were described in the different trauma books I read and all of that. I was not, uh, I was applying it to people around me because
Mm,
I could see very clearly, oh yeah, that's going on with them. And, I was trying to understand my patients and all of that. But then I think there were certain, I don't remember exactly what it would have been, but with IFS, the description of parts there was something there that just made me feel, oh, I do have a part of me that, is very self-critical, but it's not me all the time.
mm,
How does that work? So just the concept of parts and how our awareness can be taken over by one part, and then, we can be almost like a different person very soon after that. It was so intriguing because you've seen it in so many people around you and you felt it in yourself. It's like, okay, that explains so much.
mhm,
But then when I actually started to go inside, I think, there was the skeptical part of me that kind of held me back for a while. But when I was able to just allow that part of me to relax and, I could almost convey the message to it that, okay, so if this is all, bullshit, then so what?
mm.
Let's just try it. And it kind of agreed and took a step back.
Beautiful.
And from there, when I actually would ask a question in my head and then feel a part answer out,
Mm,
that was like the moment I started to get it.
mm,
Just, yeah, incredible. It's been interesting. I had a really good period there of doing a lot of IFS, and I felt that I am burdened, I guess, a lot of long held, deeply held beliefs and emotions. And I was in almost like a bit of a euphoric state for a couple of months. And I think it was like a part of me that just felt
mm.
free in euphoria. And then you start to, I think what happened to me was self-like parts started to come into the picture. And I've noticed, yeah, when I don't have a regular practice, self-like parts will take over.
Bless
Mm,
them. Yeah.
mm,
Yeah, yeah. They're really doing their best to try to understand and control what's happening. But then when I notice I'm not feeling at ease or at peace, I sit down and then usually there's that moment of like, oh, that's why it's been a self-like part the whole time.
mm, mm.
And the self, like the peace just flows naturally again. And it's always just a funny moment when that happens.
Hmm. And how do you experience self? I know it's really hard to talk about something like this, but what's your journey to feel into that? I mean, I love how you said it there, the peace just flowing naturally. That's a gorgeous way to put it. Mm.
To me, it's just a feeling of pure presence and acceptance with myself and with the world around me and reality. I think what it feels like to me that self can help parts with is to come out of the worldview that they needed to have
Mm.
and to bring nuance and to make the world coherent again
Mm.
for the parts.
Mm.
That's when they're able to relax and become what they actually want to be. Yeah, I think a few of the deep realizations or insights that I've gotten through being in self are like, I think I've had parts of me that have been angry at the world or angry at how certain things have happened in my life or that type of thing. And without forcing those parts to change, I think self has allowed the insight and nuance of it's almost like a paradox that no, that shouldn't have happened to you or that it's not right. But at the same time, the world, we don't want the world to be different or reality to be different than how it is.
Mm.
And I think that's like some sort of
Mm.
paradox that when I can hold that, I feel it just feels right in a way,
Mm.
Mm.
if that makes any sense.
It makes so much sense. It's so beautifully described. Yeah. And something about, yeah, holding the duality. It does make me think of Laura's interview again, holding that duality at the same time. And self is there, that piece is there that kind of accepts it. No, it's not okay that that happened, but we also don't want to change reality as it is, and both can be okay. Mhm.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you said at the start of the interview, you came from a very kind of engineer mindset. So was this way of experiencing yourself a surprise, or had you had some kind of spiritual practice before coming to this?
A couple of years before I discovered IFS, I had opened myself up a little bit spiritually, which would have been unthinkable sort of 5 years before that. But like, for example, I read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle,
Mm.
and I deeply resonated with that. But I think at the same time, looking back now, there were self-like parts or parts that would use spiritual bypassing or meditation as bypassing of other parts. I was delving into Buddhism for a little bit, meditating a lot, but there was something that didn't feel like fully right for me, and maybe it was just my way of going about it, but it felt like I was trying to push away my thoughts and feelings and just
Mm.
be in the now, just accept everything and trying to force it. And I think with IFS, it's very sort of flowing and there's nothing that needs to happen. When you can get into that state and that feeling of nothing actually needs to happen right now, and you can convey that genuinely to the part that you're working with, then things can flow in a natural way, the way that it needs to. And just being able to let go of that forcing has been massive for me, like in my inner work and I think in life in general. Just very freeing. I think the things you learn from doing this inner work, just it has impacts on every aspect of your life in some way.
Mm.
And I guess that's why we're all, sitting here talking about it and why we're in this sort of IFS community, which I also have to say, I think the IFS community is just amazing. Like all the people you meet that are doing IFS or into it in some way, just wonderful people. I think it feels like we've all had our own experiences that bind us in some sort of way. And I should also say the original subreddit post that I made in that IFS subreddit, I received so much help. Like people are so generous with answering questions, and you can feel sort of the self energy through the words that are written in comments. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Mm.
Mm, agreed.
Yeah, it's really beautiful to hear your description of parts and self. And I loved what you said before about giving parts a sense of coherence rather than it having to force anything, force them to let go, force them. It's just kind of, okay, how can we help this make sense for you? We don't have to make you change, but how can we help the world make sense for you? It's really beautiful.
Mm.
Something that I'm curious about, and we always love to ask our guests how they experience their parts And I'm partly asking that because when you were describing it before, it sounded like they just kind of gave you the answers in your head, which is very much how I experience parts, whereas
Mm,
Ella's very visual. And yeah,
mm.
I'm just really curious what it's been like for you, how you do experience your parts in that way. Do you see them, hear them?
Yeah, this is also a very interesting question because I think there have been moments where I can see a part, I can see a younger self, or I can go into that sort of, I'm not sure what to call it, like if it's like active imagination or
Mm.
just whatever state you need to get into to be able to see things. Sometimes I can do that. Sometimes it's almost like a part embodies itself to answer, or the answer, I can just feel the answer come up and then it kind of eases back so that I can respond to it from self. Yeah, so the tricky
Hmm.
thing to answer. It's such a
Oh, yeah.
embodied thing that can't be described in words fully, but
Yeah, it can be very vague and have a lot of nuance to it.
mhm.
And part of the reason that I think my curiosity is piqued and I wanted to speak about it now is because one of the thoughts I had about IFS Buddy, one of my little skeptical parts went, where's the line between us actually working with a part versus kind of intellectualizing that we're working with a part? I had that concern maybe that because we're writing or we have to engage language, would we be intellectualizing it? And when you said before, I just ask a question and you can just tell when it's a part that answers, that kind of eased that little skeptic concern part of me because I
Mhm.
went, oh yeah, that was has been my experience when I use IFS Buddy. If I just give it the space to not just be on the computer, typing and then asking and thinking about it and giving the answer, but instead actually reading the question and just giving myself a moment to pause and be with the answer that arises.
Mm.
That just felt like a really important distinction for me. And I'm curious if you've encountered that too, that distinction between intellectualizing and thinking what your parts are versus actually experiencing parts.
For sure. I have a very strong intellectualizing part of me, so that has happened multiple times. But usually what happens is after a certain point, you realize this doesn't really feel genuine or real. It
Mm,
feels like I'm sort of creating this myself or something like that. There's a difference. And I think that's where an IFS therapist can notice that, where a chatbot probably can't in the same way. And I think the amount of self energy that you have, or the awareness that you have of your self energy, is, I think, I would imagine it's directly correlated to how well you're going to do with just a chatbot.
mm,
So if, if there's anyone that is completely new to IFS, and that there have been a couple of people that have said that they sort of discovered IFS through the chatbot.
amazing.
But I think, yeah, I don't really know what to think of it because I want people to have the real experience. I don't want them to have some sort of an intellectualized experience of parts. Yeah, I'm open to suggestions, and I'm like, I want to figure out a way to make sure that people are bringing real self energy and actually talking to parts when they're using the chatbot.
Mhm. If our listeners are thinking, I've got an idea, is there a way people can
Mm.
get in touch with you, Martin?
Yeah, so the email for our website is, we can probably put it in show notes or something, but
Hmm.
it's hello@ifsbuddy.chat. And if you want to check out the website and try the chatbot, it's www.ifsbuddy.chat. And it's free to use. There's unlimited use of the free version of the chatbot. We also have a version where you can save your chats and save parts and target certain parts in a chat with Buddy. And that version we charge $4.99 per month for. And we used to have a donation model because the cost of running the chatbot can be a bit prohibitive. So in the beginning, I almost had to shut the website down because it was getting too expensive for me to run. But then someone suggested putting a donation button. And then after that, donations were pretty much covering the costs of running the website, which was a very cool thing.
Great.
But it's been sort of on the edge. So I had to start charging a little bit to make sure that the website isn't costing me too much. So yeah, there's a premium version that's about $5 a month.
I really liked how just the free version, you don't have to sign up as well. So people that are a bit skeptical, you don't have to put anything identifying into it. So.
Yeah. And I completely understand why you'd be skeptical of a chatbot being able to help you do IFS. And I don't think it works for everyone, but I think it works really well for quite a lot of people. But yeah, it is available for free to try. I would recommend going into it with an open mind, and yeah, if you're curious about it.
Amazing. Well, it's been fascinating hearing a bit about IFS Buddy and how it was developed, but it's been even more beautiful learning about you and your parts, Martin. Before we finish, do you want to share a poem or a quote?
Yes, and it's been very lovely conversation. It's been really nice to meet you both. The quote that I wanted to share is from Derek Scott. And for those that are listening that might not know, he was an amazing IFS therapist and teacher. And I recommend checking out his YouTube channel. And unfortunately, he passed away last year. I never had the chance to meet him, and I wish I did. But this is a quote from one of his videos. The ultimate gift of this work is realizing, what if there's nothing fundamentally wrong with me? What if there's nothing wrong with you? And what if there's nothing wrong with any of us? Yeah.
So beautiful.
So beautiful. Yeah.
Really touching. What if? Thank you, Martin. Yeah, such a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for reaching out. I'm enjoying the podcast a lot, and I'll continue to listen to it. And yeah, very good to speak to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being part of the Parts Party with Adriana and Ella. We hope you enjoyed being with us, and we wish you many moments of self-leadership. We'd love your support by liking and subscribing, and we hope to see you next time.